I've had the question more and more from you guys. Please make a video on how you've created your green screen studio. Now this video will not be a tutorial, but rather an inspirational video to other YouTubers, Udemy instructors, or anyone who likes to build their own green screen studio on a budget. Hey folks, it's Jordi here for Cinecom.net and welcome to my green screen studio. Now before we start, I'd like to say that I've got links to everything I will talk about in the description below. And let's start from the back, the green screen. Now there are multiple ways to create a green backdrop. The two most popular ones are with paint or by tightening a cloth. And either way you want to look for a vibrant green color which doesn't reflect too much, because it could reflect on the subject and therefore have bad keying results. I advise to look for paint or a cloth that is meant for chroma keying. You might think it will be more expensive, but it's not. My green screen is 4 by 5 meters and only costs 50 euros. With paint you won't get uneven shadows, but with a cloth you do, so it's important that you can tighten it in a frame. I've clamped my screen between a wooden timber and the ceiling with 2 ceiling supports, which I also use to clamp my screen on to tighten it. And now comes the first lighting. It's very important to evenly light your green screen. If you're using a hard spotlight, you will create hotspots which you need to avoid. So here's my DIY solution. On both sides I've attached a fluorescent light. I've specifically searched for a white armature with side flags to get a soft reflection. And so I was able to add some black wrap on the sides to flap the lighting from hitting the subject. This black wrap or cine foil is not only useful for this application, but can be helpful for many lighting solutions. It's a heat-resistant aluminum foil which you can wrap around any light to point it to the direction you need. Depending on the length of your green screen, you might want to add an additional fluorescent light from the top. Here I've added an extra soft filter for better spreading, but also to bend the light a bit backwards to have a backlight on the subject. As it's now coming from above, it's a very usable soft backlight. Very important when looking for an armature is that it has an electronic ballast, as it won't flicker. Conventional ballasts will give you visible flickering of the light on your camera. As for the light tubes, I went for the Philips Graphica, as they have a better color rendering. For using this on a green screen, it's not so important to have those, but these tubes weren't much more expensive as regular tubes. Now I can also use my fluorescent lights with other applications to lit the subject. So you've already seen it a bit up there. These are my DIY railing systems. It are strong metal tubes which I can adjust the length of so that I can clamp it in these U profiles or move them back and forward. Then I bought several of these tube clamps like these on which I can attach any light on. Now you can also buy such railing systems, but pay attention to the tube dimension so that your clamp can fit around it. Now if you're on a budget, you can also clamp a wooden timber again with 2 ceiling supports. That's also how I've done it in my first studio. You can then use super clamps or just some screws to attach your lights on it. On the floor I also have some colored tape to mark where the subject always has to stand. I also suggest you to do that, as you want your subject to always stand in the right place so that you won't fall into problems during the keying. For the key and the fill light, I've chosen to work with tungsten softboxes. In the current time, I would recommend to use LED panels, but they are still pretty expensive, and please never buy cheap LED lightings. If you're on a budget, buy tungsten light. Cheap LED lights will cast a green color. It not only makes your subject look dead, but it will also give a serious problem during the keying process. So I've got 2 tungsten redhead lights with a softbox on them. Tungsten light is always very pure and it gives you great color rendering. The only problem is their color temperature. But that's easy fixed by changing the color temperature of your camera or by using a CTB or blue gels like I also did. This will neutralize the temperature of your fill light so that you can better mix other colors. I've also chosen to have both of my fill and key light to be of the same intensity. But you can easily add some more contrast to your face by having one side closer than the other. We use this setup for normal presentations, but if you're adding a specific background where you see, for example, a bright sun, you can always add an extra backlight as an effect. So that was it for the visuals. Now let's have a look at the sound. You can either work with a shotgun mic that you can attach above the subject, or you can also work with a lavalier mic like I always do. Both are good options, but if your studio doesn't absorb reflections, it will never give good results. So again, there are multiple ways to do that. The cheapest solution is to fill the room with a sofa, put some mattresses against the wall, etc. But it won't look so appealing, and one thing that always concerns me is fire safety. We are working with lots of electricity, some DIY stuff and tungsten lighting. A fire can pretty easy start here. So the biggest budget of my studio went to the Auralex foam boards. They are not only fireproof but also small and have a very high absorption percentage. Even so high that you don't want to cover your whole room, because that will make the sound dead. We want to avoid reflections that cause echo, but we need a little reflection to make the sound natural. If you'd like to learn more about how to place your foam, then I suggest to watch the video from the card up there. These foams are a little investment, but they will last you forever, or you can sell them again in the future if you like. And then lastly, that I have in my studio, which I also recommend to anyone who's building one, is a simple mirror. And there are two reasons I have one. First, I always use hairspray to make sure no hairs are sticking out. Hair is often the hardest thing to key, so you want to make sure that it's even. And the second reason I have a mirror up there is also to make sure I haven't got any hairs laying weird, or that there might hang something on my cheek, because that is very distracting and annoying for the audience. For example, I once made a video about the ALS disease, and I had one lock of hair over my forehead. Not pleasant for the viewer, but I learned from it and installed a mirror. You can see that video, by the way, by clicking in the cards up there. So this was the tour around my studio. You can click in the card up there if you would like to purchase any of these products through our Amazon affiliate webshop. Or you can also find a link in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, stay creative.